It is my manager's responsibility to introduce them to the majority of my customers, which is approximately 90% of them. On the other hand, when it comes to the meat and potatoes of the matter, it is me. The fall has indeed been taken by it. When something goes wrong, it is me who is the one who has to take the hit. As you probably already know, it is like that, and many don't realize how challenging it is to truly run a business in this day and age. Without a question, Wayne Carini is certainly one of the names that are most well known in the automotive sector. Throughout his whole career, Wayne has established himself as a respected presence in the business. He is well known for his dedication and expertise in the field of restoration. On the other hand, even legendary figures have to contend with obstacles, and a few years ago, Wayne found himself in the heart of an unexpected court struggle that astonished both him and his dedicated followers. Despite the fact that his career is replete with triumphant tales and restorations of historic cars that are sure to steal the show, the case brought to light a few information about the problems and debates that are prevalent in the automotive business. Let's find out what happened that led to the great Wayne Carini being successful. Many of Wayne's admirers had not become familiar with him until they watched his hit television show, Chasing Classic Cars, despite the fact that he is known to be an ardent auto restorer and TV personality. It is not possible to say the same thing about Wayne's own enterprises, F40 Motorsport and Carini Carrozzeria, despite the fact that the show maintained its emphasis on its storyline, which consisted of restoring and presenting historic automobiles without any incidents of scandal. Over the course of several years, Wayne's enterprises found themselves embroiled in legal conflicts that threatened his long-term image as a reliable automobile dealer. The history is a little bit complicated and goes all the way back to 2010, when an Australian vintage automobile enthusiast named Robert Richmond was interested in purchasing a 1934 Pierce Arrow coupe that he had seen while he was in the United States. An American vehicle restorer named Gary Dixio, whom Richmond knew via his professional life, was hired by Richmond to assist him in managing the transaction so that the trade could be finalized. Uncomplicated was the plan. The car would be inspected by Gary, who would then acquire it if it met the requirements, restore it, and then ship it to Richmond, which is located in Australia. In an effort to speed up the transaction, Richmond made a one-time payment of $98,000 for the coupe. They had anticipated that they would be able to take ownership of the vehicle within a few weeks, but this did not occur. The back and forth of the deal appears to have strained the friendship between Richmond and Gary, and despite the fact that Richmond paid for the 1934 classic automobile, he was never able to get his hands on it. The problem was made even more difficult by the fact that Gary filed for bankruptcy in 2016, despite the fact that the Pierce Arrow coupe was still in ownership of Richmond. As a result, Richmond left disappointed and without the car that he had paid for outright. The following year, in 2017, Gary proceeded to sell the automobile without telling Richmond of any transactions that had taken place. He made contact with Gowing Motors, Inc., a business that specializes in the management of vintage automobiles, and ended up making a contract with them. The way in which Wayne Carini entered the picture was through the transaction that took place between Gary and Gowing. Wayne was contacted to perform an evaluation, despite the fact that he was without prior knowledge of the arrangement that Gary and Richmond had made. When Wayne found out that the persons involved were willing to sell the classic automobile, he expressed interest in purchasing it. Wayne calculated that the coupe was worth between $100,000 and $120,000, and he was interested in purchasing it. The car was subsequently sold to him by Gowing Motors for the price of $110,000, and in order to ensure that the transaction was legal, Gary brought the certificate of ownership with him. This certificate was then given to Gowing, and then it was given to Wayne. Following this, Wayne was confident that he had completed all of the necessary research and proceeded with his business. A short time after the purchase, Wayne was approached by RM Auctions, Inc., which is now known as RM Sotheby's, with the intention of selling the automobile being purchased. Wayne was hesitant to sell the gem because he was aware of how valuable the coupe would have been if he had kept it. In fact, he even set a high asking price of $250,000 in the hopes of driving away the auction automobile. On the other hand, he was taken aback when the corporation swiftly and without hesitation accepted his offer and bought the automobile. And later on, RM Auctions decided to sell the item, just like any other auction house would. Since this point in time, the automobile has been transferred from one owner to another, and its worth on the market has greatly increased. On the other hand, the legal conflict that was surrounding the ownership was set to make its appearance. Although all of these transactions took place over the course of several years, Gary, whom Richmond called in order to assist him with transporting the Pierce Arrow to Australia, did not provide him with any information. In point of fact, it was indicated in the court files that he submitted an application to the New Jersey Department of Motor Vehicles in order to obtain the certificate of ownership, and he was granted complete ownership of the vehicle in his own name. Richmond, on the other hand, was able to learn about his vehicle when RM Auctions held an auction. He then started hunting down the vehicle and contacting all of the individuals who were directly involved in its sale. Following Richmond's communication with the final purchaser who had purchased the vehicle from RM Auctions, the latter consented to hand the vehicle back to the auction house. Wayne, along with all of the other parties involved, came to an agreement to issue a refund. That being said, Richmond was still unable to collect his vehicle despite everything. The documents filed with the court indicate that the vehicle was being held at F40 Motorsports, which was also the owner of the title. In 2018, Richmond, who was fed up with the shenanigans, filed a lawsuit against Wayne Carini, his firms, F40 Motorsports and Carini Carrozzeria, and Gullwing Motors in an effort to take ownership of his vehicle. During the course of the 2 years that the court battle lasted, Wayne Carini and his businesses were absolutely brought to the attention of the media. Richmond contended in court, through his legal representation, that he was the legitimate owner of the Pierce Arrow coupe and that it had been sold without his permission. Richmond's argument was against the sale of the vehicle. The court went through all of the arguments and transactions, beginning with Gary's illicit sale to Gullwing Motors and ending with Wayne Carini's acquisition. RM Auctions was the last party to be considered. 1 year later, in June of 2020, the court issued a ruling that was favorable to Richmond. In addition, the judge came to the conclusion that Gary Dixo had acted dishonestly and committed embezzlement by selling the vehicle and entrusting this responsibility to him without first obtaining consent from the owner. It was ordered by the court that Richmond be given back ownership of the vehicle, and that Wayne Carini and any other parties engaged in the transaction be exonerated of any and all accusations. The court also decided that they acted in good faith, taking into consideration the fact that they believed the sale to be valid on the basis of the documentation that Gary had provided, yet they were required to repay the customer who had purchased the automobile. This accounted for the cost of the restoration that the customer had already put in the vehicle. The legal issue not only portrayed Wayne in a negative light, but it also caused his business to suffer as a result of the endless back and forth. The scandal was a hurdle for Wayne in the automobile flipping sector, which is based solely on trust nonetheless. This was not the first time that Wayne Carini would be involved in a dispute. Back in 2011, Wayne and his company, F40 Motorsports, were allegedly subjected to a lawsuit brought by a dissatisfied customer named Joe 3112D, about a Lamborghini Gallardo that was manufactured in 2007. The car was first advertised as being equipped with a luxury luggage package, which was a premium feature that was valued at $8,000. Despite the fact that there was nothing wrong with the car's performance or specifications, following the completion of their transaction and taking receipt of the automobile, the customer placed their faith in the advertisement as well as in Wayne's reputation. The client, however, did not receive any luxury package when they purchased the Lamborghini Gallardo, which was the selling point of the vehicle before they made their purchase. When the customer inquired about the missing luggage, F40 Motorsports confidently told them that the problem would be fixed in the near future. That order was the subject of agreements made by both Wayne and his salesman Mike Roberts. However, the promises were never kept. After weeks of emails and text messages that were not responded to, the customer became irritated and had no choice but to take legal action. Nevertheless, even through the legal notice, Wayne and his salesman did not respond to the customer. The client's displeasure was compounded by the fact that the team did not respond to his statements. He referred to F40 Motorsports as a full and utter fake, and he accused Wayne of lacking the courage to immediately address the various difficulties. After being neglected for a period of 2 months, the client decided to bring a lawsuit against Wayne and F40 Motorsports. This decision was made after speaking with his attorney. The client produced a copy of the original advertisement that made clear mention of the luxury package. However, the advertisement was no longer available on the internet for reasons that were only known to Wayne and his staff. The client brought this information up in the court documents. The client provided an update to the public on Lamborghini Talk, a social network for people who are passionate about Lamborghinis, despite the fact that the case was ultimately resolved outside of court. Joe 3112D reported on the website that after F40 Motorsports received the lawsuit, he finally received a reaction from Wayne directly via email. This was the first time anything like this had happened. In the email, Wayne disclosed that the premium package had been discovered by the previous owner of the Gallardo. The customer received the goods by FedEx 1 week after the email was sent to them using the service. To add insult to injury, the package also included the spare key for the vehicle, which F40 Motorsports first refused to make available to the public. As far as the customer is concerned, the problem should not have persisted for such a long period of time if Wayne and his team had taken the necessary steps. It would appear that he was prepared to part with the luxury package in exchange for the spare key to the Lamborghini. On the other hand, the salesman emphasized that they did not promote the car with 2 keys, which was accurate nonetheless. The luxury package that was offered was not provided with the car. The customer eventually received his parcel and moved on with his life, despite the fact that it took a lot longer than it should have, and that it required the assistance of legal counsel to resolve the situation.